All right, everyone, welcome back into another NBA DFS video. Going to be getting into this 2-6 slate, which is actually going to be a pretty fun one. We have a lot of kind of injury news and just players being traded news to touch on in this video, so it should be a fun one. We'll go ahead and start off kind of with the Dallas Mavericks injury news / trade news that we got. So obviously, if you guys are watching this video or watching it live or watching it later, you're an NBA fan, so I already know the news of Kyrie Irving being traded. Okay, we know that. He was traded to the Dallas Mavericks. Now, as it sits right now, I do not believe we got news on anyone playing that wasn't expected to play. So looking at right now, we'll pull up. Let's see here. Get into the model. Here we go. The Dallas Mavericks starters are currently Wright, Tim Hardaway, Josh Green. Christian Wood is actually projected to play, which, okay, that's huge. And then Dwight Powell. Okay, so with that, we can kind of expect that Christian Wood is kind of going to be the player that I think everyone is going to be ending up on. And as it sits right now, that is what we are seeing ownership projection-wise. Okay, 21% on DraftKings, 38% on FanDuel. I mean, that is huge, but it is something that makes sense, right? Probably a player that we just need to roster. And if we look at the per 36 numbers for Christian Wood with those players off the court, and this is a very small sample size, guys. Like the max minutes that we're getting into the sample size are 121, which is extremely small at this time of year. So like Christian Wood's sample size is about 82 minutes, which isn't huge. And with those two off the court, which once again, not a big sample size, only 35 fantasy points per 36, but not a big sample size. So if we just were to take like one of those off, it becomes much better. Like with Luke off the court, he averages 46 fantasy points per 36. Okay, so that becomes huge there for Christian Wood. And then just looking at with just Luke off the court, Reggie Bullock benefits a little bit minutes-wise. Tim Hardaway Jr. averages 29 fantasy points per 36, so would be someone you're looking at. Josh Green, about 25 fantasy points per 36. And Finney Smith is gone as well. DFS is gone. He was much more of a defensive style player. So not someone that was benefiting that much like DFS-wise, but still, that's another piece of the puzzle here. So with that, we can kind of see which players are going to be the best value, and all the Mavericks players are pretty much the best value plays. We see Jaden Hardy popping up there as well. He is someone that fantasy point total per 36 is around 31 fantasy points per 36. So it's really just what are the minutes looking like? So we'll scroll over and look at the minutes because this should really dictate like what we're going to be doing on this slate. So Tim Hardaway Jr., yeah, if he's going to be getting 36 minutes, that'd be huge. Okay. Now, the issue that we have on this game is that the Dallas Mavericks might be blown out. Okay. At the same time, like the top four players here are just going to be highly intriguing. Then you got Frank Ntilikina there as well at the minimum price. I'm a little bit shocked that he isn't higher owned. Now, if we get news that he's starting, that's huge. But at the same time, we got two very solid price point plays for the Mavericks, regardless of the outcome of the game. Like if it blows out, these two right here should still get their minutes. Like either way, they still should be strong price point plays. So I think those are two players that we could be looking at on this slate. If we don't even like, this is a slate in which there's so much value that like we don't need to be on them. Now, obviously we prefer to be, but it's a slate in which we don't exactly need to be, which is just crazy for this, this big Monday slate. So now I'm just trying to find some of the other injury news that we have. Let me go back into that injury tab. Well, we did get news on the Houston situation. Jalen Green is expected to be back again tonight. So that's kind of a big thing. So it's just going to be KPJ being out. So Kevin Porter Jr. is the only one out for the Houston Rockets, which at Jalen Green's current price tag, I think he's kind of an intriguing price point play. So we'll just pull up Houston real quick. And looking at it, I wouldn't be surprised if he's one of the better values on the slate. Okay, so look at it. Sangoon, Eric Gordon's still popping up there. That's a little bit shocking, but it does make sense. He's a strong price point play. And then Jalen Green, just at a cheap price point, I think he's going to be a strong price point play, probably someone that I'm going to end up being overweight on. Now, the biggest issue with this play is the potential that this game could blow out. In the last game, with him back, the game was a blowout, and he is someone that actually really struggles shooting the basketball. So there is that worry as well. The biggest issue that we're having for the Rockets on this slate is going to be, can they keep it close? That's the biggest question mark that we have on this slate. Can they keep it close? And I would say, probably 7 points is not enough for me to really get too crazy with it. Okay. At the same time, it is something that we probably do need to consider slightly. I'm just going to pull up his game log from last game. We can see the minutes weren't exactly there because the game was a blowout. I mean, that's a massive blowout right there, guys. You can see the field goal attempts, 4 for 15, not good, 2 for 8, not good as well. So there is that worry that he is just rusty, But if he's not, if that was just the first game back, struggled, he should be good to go. He's someone that averages 34 fantasy points per game already, and then with Kevin Porter Jr. off the court, almost averages 40 fantasy points per 36. So that could be someone that we are looking at on this slate. And then we do have some questions coming in, and statements, I guess. I'll be getting into those at the end of this video, okay? Or not at the end of this video, at the end of this segment. Apologies. So the biggest injury news that we are really getting on this slate is going to be looking at the Golden State Warriors. So we got news that Curry's going to be out. Okay, so with Curry out, who can we expect to pick up some usage? That's really what we need to be concentrating on. And you know what? We'll pull in Chuck here to help with this as well, because this is kind of the biggest kind of news that we are getting, I think, on this slate is kind of looking at this injury news. So let's pull in Chuck here. Give me 1 second here. There we go. All right, we got Chuck in here as well.
Hey guys, how we doing? Sorry, mixed up the time for the live stream.
So I don't think it's a big issue. Just talked about the Dallas situation that's going on. Now we're getting into the Golden State side. So, with Curry out, to me, it kind of becomes a little bit of I don't want to say guessing game, but a little bit of a worry in the sense that Poole could go off, Klay Thompson could go off, Andrew Wiggins could go off. Kind of how are you prioritizing the Golden State Warriors with the Curry injury news?
Well, the big thing is DraftKings versus FanDuel. The pricing is all better on DraftKings for all the Warriors. I think Jordan Poole is the top priority. He's only 6,200. I think it's pretty reasonable to expect 30 plus from him. And then if he puts up that 40 that we need, even though he's going to be, the most owned player on the slate, I think Jordan Poole is the top priority. And then on FanDuel at 7,400, he's still a pretty good play too. And then Klay Thompson at 7K and 7,600 at those ownerships, I think that's pretty reasonable too. And then as a tournament play, I think Andrew Wiggins is good. He's been bad lately, but without Steph, his usage should be up there, and his ownership doesn't seem too bad right now.
Situation in which we could maybe run out. I know you don't like to do the stacks, but to me, that seems like a decent stacking opportunity if that were to be a route. Like maybe we, just because the value's there, we prioritize maybe 2 Golden State Warriors and maybe 1 OKC Thunder. That way we can kind of get stack of one game, and then maybe the Dallas game, we can get a secondary stack going. Mm-hmm. I mean, just with the soft pricing, to me, that kind of just makes sense.
Well, when I was making my dummy earlier, the Thunder player I was most interested was Josh Giddey. His price at 7,800 I think is good. It's just a problem with we don't know if he's going to play 29 or 36 minutes. He's been getting there in 29 minutes though. So if he has the potential to play 36, I think he's the play that we want. From the other side, SGA is going to be great too. But Giddey's price, it's easier to work with today.
Yeah. But, yeah. I mean, SGA just went for 50 against them. Let me pull up Giddey real quick. And Giddey just went for 44. So yeah, it's crazy. That's crazy.
One thing I will say though is Shea's been near the top of the model for a couple of weeks now, and he's the second player in the model today after Giannis. Like by far, it's him and Giannis, and then after that, like Dame, DeMontis, whatever. But Shea's ownership at 4%, like it was 1% last slate. He put up almost 60. Like I think the 4% ownership is something we want to attack still. Even though I said Giddey's my favorite play due to pricing, he's coming in low on too. But I think this whole team is kind of low, and Kendrick Williams is also he's been playing pretty well lately off the bench.
Yeah, 4%. That is actually pretty shocking. I know the price tag has risen, but it really should be. His per 36 numbers with those players that are still at the court, Dort, Alexei, and Robinson Earl, like they haven't really changed at all. It's still like a 40% usage rate, which is just crazy. So yeah, that's a play that I think we can firmly, be in on. And then really the last injury situation that we need to get into is going to be that Brooklyn injury news. Or trade news, I guess, just obviously, Kyrie Irving's gone. They traded for DFS and Spencer Dinwiddie. They have TJ Warren, who's expected to play. Ben Simmons is currently a game time decision. KD is out. So looking at it right now, we have TJ Warren projected to get 16 minutes. Seth Curry is out. And then we don't have Ben Simmons projected to get minutes. Oh, yeah, we do. Okay, we do. 26 minutes. So how are we prioritizing Brooklyn tonight?
So as far as like the three teams we're targeting, Dallas, the Warriors, and Brooklyn, I think Brooklyn is last. So like overall, because I think Edmund Sumner and Cam Thomas could be two really strong plays. Their prices are a little bit tougher on FanDuel, but DraftKings, they both look great. And then with players like Nick Claxton, Royce O'Neal, Ben Simmons, like Royce O'Neal I might have some interest in, but Ben Simmons and Nick Claxton, I'm going to have a tough time getting there. With Nick Claxton, there's not many centers we're interested in today, but his price is up there at 8K on DraftKings, 84 on FanDuel. And even though his ownership is low, we can take some shots, but it's a tough Clippers matchup. And this team is like just looking at like who's going to be on the court for them. It's not really, it's going to be a tough time for them today.
You get news that like TJ Warren is ruled out. Does that help you with or get onto Ben Simmons at all?
I don't know because so with Kyrie stepping out, I feel like Edmund Sumner and Cam Thomas are going to be the ones to pick up the extra usage just because Ben Simmons doesn't take that many shots. And so if we're vacating 20 to 25 shots from Kyrie, Ben Simmons is not going to take even 10 more shots because of that. And so he might have the ball in his hands a lot. Maybe his assist rate goes up a little bit. I'm not sure, but at his price, I'm not really interested in Ben Simmons today, regardless of who's in. Yeah, I think Cam Thomas and Edmund Sumner are the priorities, but let's see a starting lineup and make sure.
Yes. All right, so that kind of concludes the injury kind of preview section of this video. We'll go ahead and get into the top guards, but first we'll touch on some of the questions that just came in. So looking at it right now, hey, I love watching your show. Beginner to DFS, can you please help me figure out which teams to focus on today? So I would say just right out the bat that's kind of the wrong way of looking at it. I don't think you really want to be looking at like by teams. It's more or less who are the top value price point plays and who are the top payout plays, and simple. You got a easier or more simple answer there, Chuck?
No, yeah, going off of that, we're not picking players necessarily. Like players are the whole thing. That's what we're doing. But the players that we're talking about, we're not just pulling them out of a hat. Like we're interested in these players because of what the data shows, the projections, going off ownership, like the players coming in with ownership are probably the best plays for a reason, right? And so I think that's one thing. If you're playing DFS, you don't want to get too, like if you're new to DFS, you don't want to get too like hooked onto like early player takes, right? Like you hear something about this player and for the rest of the day, that's your guy. I think that's the incorrect way. I think that you look at the data and let that select the players for you. Like you can have your takes, but I think for the most part, you just want to look at good projections and stick to that, or follow advice on shows like this and play the players that we talk about the most.
Yeah, honestly, it is kind of that simple sometimes too.
Yeah.
Sup, dude? How you doing? We are doing well. We got a fun slate today. It's a fun, honestly, whenever there's NBA like trade news, it just makes like content for NBA just a lot easier the next day.
It makes NBA DFS way more difficult though for the week before.
To me, that's what's fun about it though, because you gotta figure it out. It's not as straightforward.
It's like a
And
big
then they were
puzzle.
saying that the audio is bad. Is it good now, guys? Just let us know. Joe said it was fixed. Yeah, just let us know. So switching up, we're going to get into the top guard plays on this slate. We kind of mentioned some of them, but we'll go ahead and get into it more specifically here. So I'm going to sort it by DraftKings position. And remember, this is on the Occupy Fantasy, the NBA model. Okay, so it's a pretty simple tool. You can sort it by whichever position you want. And so we're going to sort it by the guard position on DraftKings. And so looking at the best values that we are currently getting are Sumner, Kispert popping up there, Jordan Poole, Mann, Eric Gordon. Oh, the Spurs. I forgot about that. Popping up there. Mike Conley still popping up, SGA. Honestly, lots of interesting guard plays on this slate now that, we're sorted by that. What are your kind of thoughts on this? Because now it's kind of popping up. Like, it's crazy how many good plays we have on this slate.
Yeah, one thing about like lineup construction tonight, like I mentioned, Jordan Poole is probably the top play on the slate at 6,200 on DraftKings. He's projected for crazy ownership, and Edmund Sumner, I have a feeling he's going to come in higher percent than that once he's confirmed in the starting lineup. And so one thing we're considering, like Edmund Sumner is point guard only, but Jordan Poole has a shooting guard eligibility. Like that's already 2 guards on DraftKings. We can roster 4 total if we're good with the spots. But I think a pretty common build tonight is going to be Poole and Edmund Sumner. And so, there's going to be other chalky guards too. Klay Thompson, Drew Holiday, Jaden Hardy, Josh Richardson. And so it's okay to play a combination of those guys, but I think we really want to mix in like a low percentage guard like SGA, Josh Giddey, even like a Jaden Ivey or Jordan Clarkson, for example, just low owned guys, just to get a little bit unique because we still want to play the best plays, but we have to do something to get a little bit different from everyone else.
Yeah, I kind of think that's a really good thought process for kind of this slate because there are some like kind of eye-popping price point plays, values that we can be on, which is really spiking up the ownership. But the thing is, we can't be on all of them. So I think that does make a lot of sense to be on someone that is lesser owned that still has a good chance to go off because it does seem like just looking at the ownership projections right now that people might just be prioritizing the standout value price point plays and just kind of forgetting about some of the studs that we have on this slate, like you mentioned with SGA in a smash spot against the Golden State Warriors. I like that take a lot. I think that's a pretty strong take on the slate thus far.
Yeah, and one thing I'm noticing is like this has been the case on a couple of slates recently where we have good value at guard, and so the higher priced guards are just going to come in under around SGA. Josh Giddey's like still high priced because I'm finding a lot of my builds are paying down a guard and getting up to like Giannis. And so if you just flip that, then you instantly have a different roster construction and there's less that you need to do in terms of picking the players to get different from the field just because your overall roster construction is already so different.
Yeah.
That's a big help.
So I'm looking at right now, sorting by DK ownership right now. Jordan Poole, number 1, Hardy, number 2, Edmund Sumner, number 3. We got Drew Holiday, number 4, which kind of surprised me. Klay Thompson, number 4. Frank Ntilikina, number 5. And then you go lower, Josh Richardson, Zach LaVine, Garland, Cam Thomas, Damian Lillard. Like those guys are all over 15% owned. And if you look at the top 5, they're all over 20% owned. Are any of those a little bit shocking to you? Because like to me, Drew Holiday feels like he could probably be a little bit too high of ownership. I know he's at 7.6, which is a cheap price tag, but to me, I think I'd much rather get to Klay Thompson. And I know he's a point guard and Klay is a shooting guard, but we're prioritizing probably some other guards over, Drew Holiday. So I'm just kind of looking at the guard position. Is that kind of what you'd be? I don't know. That ownership on Drew just seems a little bit strange. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I'd be kind of surprised if Drew's ownership actually came in that high. I think that'll flip once we get closer to lock with Edmund. So I would expect Edmund Sumner's ownership to go up.
Yeah.
And then with players like I would never play Frank Ntilikina, even if we project him for 30 plus minutes tonight. He's Davion Mitchell basically. He's going to be on the court, but he's not going to do much. Just so from the top guards, that is for sure my least favorite, Frank Ntilikina. So, I think the rest are playable.
Real quick on that. So are you saying that you're not going to be playing him or just underweight on him? Like 20 and 27% projected own is too high? Or is that just like maybe you got 5% to him?
Oh, I'll have 0 tonight of Frank Ntilikina. So it's like he's 3K and we've seen other 3K players. I think Javon Carter was a popular one earlier in the year where on a short slate, we really only need 19 or 22 fantasy points to be in a winning lineup. But tonight with all the other value we have, like if Edmund Sumner puts up 30 plus and Klay Thompson puts up 40, Jordan Poole puts up 40, even Jaden Hardy puts up like 27, it's just going to be really tough for Frank Ntilikina to make a winning lineup unless you have the rest of the spots exactly perfect. He could always have a really good game, but if we're hoping for 22 fantasy points from a 3K player, I don't think that's the guy that we want to target.
Yeah. Would that change at all if he was projected to be starting?
I'm assuming he's starting, and I think there's really no one on this team I want to target, and it's like there's so much usage gone because of Luka, but there's no ball. Like Frank Ntilikina is a ball handler. I don't know if THJ is a ball handler, but his price is a little bit high, and I think this team is going to be tragic tonight.
Yeah, they could be. I mean, so is that a situation where you might not even be playing Christian Wood that much? Because of that?
Well, is he confirmed in? If he's confirmed in, that's probably the only Maverick I'm really interested in other than Jaden Hardy. Jaden Hardy, I think we're interested in because he's young. He's going to play the minutes and he gets stats other than actual points where, like I said, THJ, he's really just going to score real points, a couple of rebounds, a couple of assists.
I mean, he could get hot and go off. He's kind of like Eric Gordon, just at a higher price tag.
Oh, yeah. These three-point shooters can always get hot, but what's his ownership coming out today? For THJ. So it's only showing 11% on DraftKings, but 51% on FanDuel. So the price difference is only 1,000. I expect his ownership will be higher on DraftKings than 11%. But even then, it's like we need 40 from THJ tonight, and he can do it, but I think it's pretty unlikely.
Yeah. I mean, they played Utah 4 games ago. He went 1 for 7 from 3, and 4 for 12 total. Like, sure. If you flip that, maybe goes 4 for 7. It could easily be, an upside ceiling game, but I get what you're saying there. That makes sense. And just on Christian Wood, we did get news that Christian Wood is active. So
okay, nice. That's good.
Or he's available. So you never know with NBA news, but he's available to play.
So I don't even know if that's good because now we have to make a decision on Christian Wood. I saw last night that if he did play today, he could possibly be on a minutes restriction. And so at his price, it's like, is he on a minutes restriction? We can't really trust Jason Kidd. So it's tough.
You bring that up, which just makes me think of just the Kyrie trade. And it's just like, you can't trust Kyrie's availability on a per night basis. You can't trust Jason Kidd minutes wise. It's the interesting situation in general there with what happens.
Yeah.
I'm excited for that.
And actually, I do want to mention McKinley Wright. I would be much more likely to get to McKinley Wright than Ntilikina. I'm still not going to really get there that much, maybe a couple percent though. But it just seems like he is more capable of producing fantasy points than Ntilikina.
To me, it kind of just seems like a situation in which, based off what you're saying, which I was going to be on Frank Ntilikina, but I would say we are just kind of getting some exposure to these players and just kind of mixing and matching it. Maybe we create a rule where we only get one of these players in there, whether it's, Josh Green, Frank, Hardy, maybe even Christian Wood. There's a potential that this game blows out. So I would say we do want a piece of this, but based off what you're saying, I do kind of agree now that maybe just get one or two and just set a rule in there and don't go crazy with it.
Well, considering the blowout too, I'm so surprised that this is still at 9 points right now. I feel like it should be more than 9 points. I don't see how the Mavericks keep this within 9, but Vegas is good, so 9 points is probably the correct line. I'm still taking Jazz -9 here, but
and it's not even a high game total either. 223, no. Like that. That's what's surprising too. So
yeah, like that's actually I think that's low for the Jazz and high for the Mavericks, right? So.
But without Luka too.
Oh, without Luka, yeah. So it is fast. The game is a little faster without Luka, but we don't really know because usually they have Dinwiddie, and tonight who's
the
running
sample
the
size
offense?
is so small. It's crazy.
We're guessing. So.
Yep. Are there any other players that are kind of pulling up guard wise that we need to touch on? Like I mentioned Eric Gordon in passing, like sure, could get hot, 1% owned. Nothing we're going crazy with. Someone mentioned a question about AO with the Chicago Bulls, 1%, 4.5 feels a little bit too priced up. Grayson Allen, 1%, Malcolm Brogdon, 1%. Like any of these players pulling up that are like less than 1% that are not named SGA?
Well, those last 3 you named, I'm not really getting to at all. But some other like low owned guys, I'm really, for guards, I'm really not getting that contrarian. Like all of my top 7 owned guards are above 15%, and then Donovan Mitchell is 8th at 11 or whatever he is now. And so it looks like I'm going to go chalky at guard, and I'll probably try to get a little bit different elsewhere. But I think Josh Giddey and SGA are the 2 early ones that I'm comfortable saying are good plays at low ownership.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And it's a later game, right? So we had that benefit too, where if, that's nice.
I actually think these two late games are really good games to target tonight. If you're playing the night slate, it's a really fun night slate. But on the main slate, if you're heavy on these two games, I think that's like we said, we don't target games, but there's players from these games we're pretty interested in.
Well, if you look at like all the value, it's going to be in Brooklyn at 6:30. A lot of people are going to be loading up there. Dallas is at 8. So in theory, and I guess the Spurs a little bit, in theory, like the lineups are going to pretty much be locked in. So it could be a pretty good chance to maybe get contrarian a little bit with that late night game. Like you said, they're both appealing. So I like that thought process a lot.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
You might be making me not do a single entry here and enter more GPPs with that. Honestly, it seems like a good spot to do that.
I love it. I like when I was looking at my lineups earlier, I kind of think I'm only going to play I'm not playing 150 on DraftKings today, only 40, I think. So I'm considering locking in the players I really like. As of now, it's like Edmund Sumner, maybe Cam Thomas, and Jordan Poole, and just like cut down on the combos I need. It's pretty risky to do that, but I think those guys are in the winning lineup tonight, like most of the time, if things go the way that we're thinking.
So let's just say Poole has a poor night. Are you creating any sort of rule in which, all right, lineups that don't have Poole, I want either Clay or Wiggins?
No, but I would do if I don't even know if you can do this in any optimizers, but if you could do something like if Poole is not in the lineup, give a slight boost to Klay Thompson or Wiggins. I wouldn't do like have to play one of them,
Yeah. Well, you can also, once you upload all your lineups, you can go through and kind of highlight and whatever, sort by that too. But yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll go ahead and move on into the top forwards on the slate now. This is where it's going to get interesting for sure. So once again, let me just sort by the top forwards. We'll do FanDuel this time, just to give you guys kind of a different approach there. Seeing if there's any questions coming in as well, just real quick. They said audio's good. Would rather have a blank spot than play Niakila. Gosh, I'm butchering his name right now. It's not rolling off the tongue. Now I'm torn between SGA and Lillard. Who would you go with in a single entry?
So we don't really want to do 1v1s because we're going to be wrong almost half the time, if not more than half the time. And so in these kind of situations, SGA versus Lillard, I'm just going to look at the model and see if there's a big difference, then I'm just going to choose that one. And if they're pretty much the same, then most of the time I'm going to go with whoever's lower owned, assuming there's like a decent gap in ownership. Like if it's 12 versus 14, that's the same, but 20 versus 12 is a big difference. So Damian Lillard coming in 14% on DraftKings, SGA coming in 4%. And the model has SGA as a better play and a better value across the board with lower ownership at the same price. So the default answer is pretty much just going to be SGA here. Yeah, like I have takes, but there's a lot of times I'm indifferent between two very similar players. And if the ownership gap is huge, then that's usually enough for me. I'm still going to get to Dame, but like I'm going to be over the field on Shea and under on Dame, if that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. No, it does.
So, yeah.
So looking at the forwards, the highest owned player forward-wise is Giannis. Giannis has been on a tear. The price has finally been corrected, but he's still getting a lot of ownership. Are you worried about this production falling off? Probably not against Portland, but what are your kind of thoughts there?
I love Giannis tonight. Before I looked at any projections, I thought that he was going to be in most of my lineups, and then I ran some stuff, and right now he's my second highest owned player after Jordan Poole. And like I mentioned earlier, that just comes down to we have all the guard value. And so if you're playing all the guard value with Giannis, you do have to find a spot to get different. But I think that's the strongest way to start your lineups today is with the good guard value and Giannis.
Okay, so you know what? We're going to put him into the lineup for now as well, just to get that started off correctly. And then we kind of mentioned Christian Wood on DraftKings. Probably feels a little bit too priced up at 8.4, just kind of for the reasons that it could be a blowout. Now, the usage is going to be crazy. The sample size that we have with Dinwiddie and DFS and with Luka off the court is very minimal, not even worth really mentioning. With Luka off the court, he does average about 45 fantasy points per 36. With that being said, at 38% ownership, where he's a little bit cheaper, is that where we're playing him and just eating the ownership there, or
so I think 7,900 on FanDuel is a fine price, but like I said, with the minutes restriction thing, like if he comes in close to 40%, I think that's too high. I might just not play him at all on FanDuel. I don't know if I'm going to play Christian Wood. We need to see some news from Jason Kidd on a minutes restriction or the starting lineup, who's with him, stuff like that. But either way, I think the 40% is probably too high on FanDuel, because the thing is, like, we don't really want to make adjustments for blowout risk. Like I said, Vegas has this as a 9-point game, but it's tough. It's tough. But again, we have all the value, so it's not hard to get there. But it's tough for me to see Christian Wood in my lineups.
So you talk about the potential for blowout risk and the potential for minutes restriction. So it's like two of those things where, let's say they don't get their final rotations. Well, what would the rotation be like for Christian Wood if he's on a minutes restriction? Would it be set up for him to get the final rotation, or would it be set up for him already not to get the final rotation? Like, that's all stuff we don't have, and that's kind of going back to why you want the injury report, the news before lock.
Yeah, like his usage is going to be off the chart tonight, but if he only plays, 22 minutes, for Christian Wood, he actually could get there in 22 minutes, but we don't really want to bet on that. And in my early runs, I'm not getting to Christian Wood that much.
So looking at Klay Thompson here going against OKC, I find this very crazy that on DraftKings 7K coming in at 20% ownership, on FanDuel 7.6 and coming in at 5% ownership. Yes, he's higher priced on FanDuel, but like he's still a good play. I know he's more appealing on DraftKings. Is this a spot in which, if you're playing on FanDuel, you could potentially get to him more?
Yeah, on my early run, it looks like I'm at about 9 or 10% Klay Thompson, which is going to be over the, it looks like it's 2x the field over there. But I think he's fine at 7,600. There's no Steph. Like, it's always a little tougher when Steph's not on the court, and I think OKC is actually sneakily good, kind of like Orlando's sneaky good. But Klay Thompson, 7,600, 5%. I'm going to take shots.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. Then just looking at some of the other players, just kind of sorted by FanDuel ownership now. It's pulling in there. Tim Hardaway Jr., we already kind of mentioned him. Yeah, he's a lot cheaper there, but still feels like a GPP only play. Christian Wood, if on FanDuel, you have to, sure, whatever. DeMar DeRozan, strange price tag. 37% seems way too high. And same thing with Zach LaVine. Now, that is a game that probably is going to be a blowout, and they're going to be the reasons why it's a blowout. Do you have any thoughts on those two specifically? I guess they're both pretty cheap across the board. What are your kind of thoughts on DeMar and Zach tonight?
So I think their prices are good on FanDuel, and then on DraftKings they're fine. They're probably correct on DraftKings, I should say. But I do I never love these guys at high ownership, 37%, 32%. To me, it's just too high. Like, usually if DeMar is usually the highest owned one, I'm just going to have more LaVine and more Vooch. But today, like, I'm not really interested in flipping it. They're showing up in my stuff, but not, they won't be represented in my lineups like they will be in the rest of the fields.
To me, it feels like with Vooch and DeMar, they're kind of priced at their ceiling. Like, you're not going to get that much more out of them. Where LaVine, he can go off for 50 and whatnot. I would say you could be on LaVine still, but be cautious. It's just weird. I know the matchup's great, but it's kind of eye-popping that they're coming in that high-owned on FanDuel.
Yeah, it's just they fit when people are putting their lineups together.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, not my favorite spot to get to today, but they're in my player pool, so.
Yeah. Let's see here. Klay, that's just pretty cheap on FanDuel. I like that. Kawhi 3%, but he's priced up on both FanDuel and DraftKings. Let's see. Let's go by value now. DK value. So Corey Kispert is really popping up as a DK value at 3.5. He's shooting guard and forward eligible. Any thoughts on him?
So Corey Kispert we like because I want to say he played 36 minutes last game. So he's been getting the minutes. And Kuzma's out tonight, so maybe it's a couple more threes. But he's not a guy where Kuzma's out, he's going to start handling the ball and picking up assists now. So seeing him at the top of DK value for forwards, he is good value. He makes lineups work. Yes. But when I'm playing these cheap guys, and this might be a mistake, but, how likely is this guy going to put up close to 30 fantasy points tonight? And he could do it. And so with these guys, like 7% on DraftKings, 1% on FanDuel, I will take some shots on Corey Kispert, but I don't think he's the best value of the day. No. Maybe forward stuff, but then that goes back to we have all the value at guards, and forward value is kind of tough. So
Yeah, I could see myself ending up on him and feeling fine with it pretty much. Like, can he give us the 17 fantasy points at 3.5 that he averages? Sure. And I feel pretty decent about that then. And other players, Al Horford popping up there, who always seems to be, just because this price kind of stays low and they've been on some good matchups lately. Kelly Olynyk's back, pulling in as a decent value at 4.1 on DraftKings. Josh Hart, Eric Gordon, Grant, anyone of those players kind of popping up as players we want to be trying to get maybe overweight on the field. None of them are too high owned or projected for ownership.
I mean, as of right now, just looking at this is kind of gross. Like, I'd be interested in getting over 1% of Eric Gordon, but not much.
Yeah.
And the other guys like Kelly Olynyk, he's in the starting lineup again next to Laurie and Walker Kessler, which is tough for him because he's not getting all the big man minutes, and so his rates are all down. Like Terrence Mann is playing next to Kawhi and PG, Al Horford's playing next to Robert Williams. So I don't think any of these guys are really someone I want to target. I think Eubanks was probable for tonight. He's probably going to play, but if he misses, Watford would be a great play.
Yep.
Kate's drop on the Spurs is going to keep going overlooked. 4,600 on DraftKings is a little bit tough to get to, but I think it's okay.
Yeah, so we haven't really touched on the Spurs at all. They're pretty banged up right now. Is there anyone that you're prioritizing more over anyone else? Like Stanley Johnson's popping up as a decent value. Yeah, if he's going to be getting around 25 minutes, sure, it could be the same play as Corey Kispert that we just mentioned, where if you end up on him, you're fine with it. Is there anyone that you're really prioritizing, maybe price point wise?
Prioritizing, I don't think so. Like Josh Richardson looks great, but I think 5,500 is a little tough for him to get the ceiling there. Stanley Johnson at 22% on DraftKings, I don't really understand it. He's such a low rate fantasy player. Like he must have had a good game last game or something, because I know I've been checking
36 last two.
Okay, so he's had a couple of good games in a row, but that's above his season average. If he gets some extra run, then it's a good possibility, especially in a blowout. But at that ownership, I don't really want to play a 22% owned Stanley Johnson banking on a blowout and banking for.
That was Josh Richardson. He had 24 last game, but still, yes.
Oh, okay.
Reasons. Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah, and then Josh Richardson too. Yeah, Josh Richardson's fine though. I feel like he's a pretty good low risk play. I would be, I'm surprised if he scores less than 25, but I don't really expect him to score more than 32 or 33. But because he's the main ball handler tonight, with Trey Jones out, I think he's fine.
Yeah. I don't want to butcher Malachi's last name there, but he's someone I think could be in play going against Chicago. 35 minutes, 32 minutes, 35 DK points, 32. But with all the other guard value that's already out there, it's like it feels like we'd probably be forcing that in when we don't really need to.
Well, Malachi, so his price was, I don't know if it was 4K or 3,900 last time, but we were pretty interested in him. The main thing with him is if he's starting, he's still getting the blowout run in blowouts. And I think he would close games. I don't think they've had a close game, so I can't check. But
yeah, it's not really.
The fact that he's going to be on the court either way is just those extra 5 minutes of blowout time are huge for a player at this price. And so I am interested in Malachi today.
Yeah. It's kind of like the same stuff with the Spurs as like every slate, it seems like, where there is some decent price points, I would say. But for the most part, it's like, can we really predict the minutes? And they're all kind of priced where they should be.
Yeah, I would say today they're all the contrarian play. But they like you can get to a bunch of them. Like Pirtle's still fine. Keldon Johnson, I don't like playing, but he's 7,100, so it's reasonable. Zach Collins, 4,300, it's reasonable.
Yeah, if they keep it close. Pirtle and also Keldon Johnson are going to be the reasons why. So,
yeah, well, with Pirtle, his price is coming back up again, but 5,900 on DraftKings, he's been losing minutes, and if he even gets like the 28, 29 minutes, he's a decent center play. It's 5,900. We don't have that many centers we love today.
Yeah, I mean, maybe Zach Johnson gets minutes and then gets in foul trouble too or something. You never know. Like, try and get lucky there if you play him. Playing him for the ceiling. All right, just going to look at some questions here real quick again. Let's see here. I'm getting a lot of Lillard and Giannis combos. Yeah, that's fine. We kind of like SGA a little bit more. Stanley Johnson pulling some ownership. It is kind of strange there with Stanley Johnson, as we mentioned. Probably a little bit too high. Fine value price point play, though. Wonder when Bucks start to give Chris Middleton more minutes. The thing with it is, like, they don't really need to give Chris Middleton more minutes right now because they're winning a lot and he's playing extremely efficient. So they're going to wait until the All-Star break. And then the question is, how long until after the All-Star break will he start to get minutes? He's not someone that we should be playing in DFS, just given the fact that the minutes are not guaranteed, and he's not going to be that efficient going forward. It's kind of as simple as that, and that's why Drew is pulling in some ownership still.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, so we'll go ahead and move on into the centers here. I think we should start with Sabonis going against Houston. Sabonis has been running cold, except for one game against the Spurs.
Mm-hmm.
What do we do with him?
So the first thing I notice is we're showing him at 3% ownership on DraftKings. Very, very, very interested at 3%. Like if you play, so the other day Sabonis was 40% owned. I think I had 50% in my lineup, so I was still over the field. But today he's 3% owned. If I have 12% of Sabonis, I'm not taking that big of a risk. It's only 12% of my lineups, but I'm 4x the field. And so these are the guys that we want to target. Like you want to talk about who are we targeting in DFS? Like these are the players who was chalk last game and failed. And he has a good matchup today. They're playing against Houston. Like this is one of the matchups we should be targeting Sabonis. His price is up, but his ownership is down. And we have the value plays to get there pretty easily. And so I like taking a lot of shots on Sabonis today.
Yeah, his per 36 numbers are pretty strong. His Fox still off the court, right? He's still out, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So his per 36 numbers with him off the court are pretty high. And now you get a favorable matchup against Houston. That does make sense to really try to gain some leverage on the field. If we look at his 2 games against Houston, it's pretty eye-popping. 73 and 55 DK points. Those are back-to-back games. Maybe they adjust now. But still, that's eye-poppingly good. And you pull in the per 36 numbers with that, it's pretty good play, especially at that ownership. So like 2 great ownership plays that we're getting right now, SGA and Sabonis. And on a slate in which we can afford to pay up for players, their ceilings are pretty high, and it makes a lot of sense. And maybe Giannis is a little bit too chalky. Maybe you make some pivots in some GPP lineups. Not go crazy with it, because Giannis should be a smash play, but I don't mind that idea.
Yep.
All right, so then Vooch, we kind of said too high priced. Any other centers that you really like? We got some low ownerships on some plays.
It's funny because most of the time when I'm building my dummy lineup, reserving my lineups, I always have a center only in the center position. Like if someone has power forward center eligibility, they're always going to be in the power forward spot. But there was not a single center only player that I could find that like made my lineup work the way I wanted to. I think Evan Mobley was the guy I plugged in. 7,200 on DraftKings. To me, that's the best center play for the price. And then I don't even know if there's anyone else I'm confident enough to even throw a name out there. Like Jalen Duren, I'm always going to have interest in at low ownership. And I think Isaiah Stewart was questionable today. If he ends up being out for whatever reason, Jalen Duren's going to look good. But if Isaiah Stewart's in, he's coming in at 1% ownership on DraftKings. Like I think the 5,200 price is a little bit too high, and he's been performing over expectation. But he played 37 minutes over the last couple games. So if he ends up staying close to that ownership 1% for Isaiah Stewart, then I'm gonna like taking some shots on him too. But there's really not that many centers that look good today, I guess.
To me, I find it kind of interesting, this center position, because looking at right now, we got Nick Claxton coming in at 2% and 3% on FanDuel and DraftKings. To me, like that could be a spot to really gain some leverage on the field. You're really just betting on that game staying close. I kind of like that. Now, we're not going crazy with it, but can we be at maybe 8% and be over the field? Sure. And then Sengun, any thoughts on him? Because he's coming in at really low ownership, and we actually had a question about him on the chat as well. Do you have any thoughts on him tonight?
A few slates ago, it was I think it was 2 games that they did not start a true point guard, and so the offense was kind of running through Sengun. But then as soon as they put Deshaun Nix or Josh Christopher in that starting lineup next to him, that's gone away. The ball isn't like the offense isn't running through him anymore like I thought it was going to be. And so I'm interested in him at the low ownership, but I'm not as excited about him as I was a couple of weeks ago. We have more information now. We have more data on what his stats look like next to, say, Jalen Green, Eric Gordon, Jabari Smith, all these guys. And like he looks okay, but at 3% again, yeah, like if we have 6-7% of Sengun players like Nick Claxton in our player pools, I think that's the way to do it.
Like those are 2 players, like if they put up, let's say 45, 50, like it really wouldn't be shocking, right?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Just given the players that are out, the stars that are out and whatnot. Yeah.
Yeah. And me personally, like the the easiest way I've had success, like in one tournaments in DFS this year, is just getting the right combo of two low-owned guys, and then just playing the best plays around it. Like it's extremely difficult, but it's like it's more simple, I think, than people make it out to be.
Yeah, and this is seeming like just a slate in which, as it sits right now, ownership wise, there are a lot of appealing ownership leverage spots right now, just across the board.
Yeah, just consider where the ownership's going to go at the positions and which positions are going to be light on ownership. And tonight it's guard, pay up guards.
Yep. So see if we have any more questions here, and then we'll get into kind of the core play section of this video. They just said Fox is back. The question about Sengun, we already answered. I have one spot left in my roster. 3.9 at the small forward position. Any thoughts?
So the way that I do this is if you're looking at the model, adjust the sliders DK to max price of like as close as you can get it. So I got it to 4K, and then just look at which forwards are at the top of value under 4K. And right now it looks like the answers are Corey Kispert, Terrence Mann, Stanley Johnson, Trenton Watford, maybe Isaac Okoro. Like if I had a really strong stand on one of these value guys, I would give you my answer. But because I don't, I mean, I guess a lot of the time it's going to be the highest owned guy, which is Stanley Johnson, but I don't like Stanley Johnson today, and he's 3,300. So you're leaving some dollars on the table. Yeah, I don't know. It's a tough question to answer. It's in that spot. I think I would just rearrange my lineups and try to make it so I could get in a different guy. But if you really love it, then just plug in the guy that's projected for the highest ownership, I think.
Yeah. And if it's like a cash build or a single entry build like that, I would be fine with Kispert and Johnson just to close out.
Yeah.
GPP wise, know, it would feel like you're forcing it a little bit, but
yeah, it definitely depends on the size of the contest.
And really how much they like their build. Like if they love it and they're okay, I'm fine with those two because those two won't hurt. They won't help either, most likely.
Well, my philosophy is if you really love your single entry build today, you should probably start over and remake it. Because a lot of the time you want to be uncomfortable with your lineups.
That's honestly, that's like probably the biggest learning curve in DFS, especially NBA DFS. It's that you got to not like your lineup a lot, like not a lot, but enough to feel uncomfortable. Like you said, that is such a good point.
Yeah, I think I take it to the extreme too much where I hate my lineups and they're bad. And so it's like, you got to find the right balance.
Yes. Okay, so we'll get into the core play section of this video. I think we kind of settled in on Jordan Poole as just like a core play. Should be a stellar play at that price point. Going against OKC, yes, he's going to be chalky, but he should be correct chalk. He's some of that on the season, averages 32 fantasy points per game. With Curry out, he gets the most minutes. His per 36 numbers go up by like 6. And he could easily put up 40 against OKC. Anyone else that we're looking at from there? I know you're on Edmund Sumner. You want to just kind of highlight that again real quick?
Yeah, assuming Edmund Sumner is in the starting lineup, he's going to be one of my highest owned players. I'm going to consider locking him. I'm not sure, though. But they don't really have ball handlers. I guess they have like Patty Mills and maybe they had one other guy. But very interested in Edmund Sumner on DraftKings. His price is great. And along with Jordan Poole and Giannis, I would say those three are, as of now, are my core. Now, that always changes with news, but I'm not sure what news could happen for those three to not be my top 3 plays today. And now everyone knows these are the top 3 plays, so it's not like this is sneaky or anything. But I think this is the best way to start your lineups.
I think we could do a segment. I'll start it off here. Is top core sneaky plays. Let's just talk about that.
I like that.
So I'll start it off. I'll go with Nick Claxton as one of those. We said he was under 5%. Someone that could easily go for 40, 750 DK points. If that game stays close, he's going to be the reason why. So I think he's going to be a player that could be in a good spot. You look at Sabonis going against Houston. I think that's a really good spot as well. He's someone that could easily put up 60, and like it wouldn't be shocking at all given that matchup with Houston. Sengun, if the minutes are there, he is someone that could easily go off and kind of break the slate. We already mentioned SGA as well. Like these are 4 players that really have a high ceiling that could really go on and break the slate at like sub 5% ownership. And I kind of feel like you kind of talked me into it. I feel like that's kind of the approach to go with on this slate is in some spots, given the value that's out there, this is how we differentiate. Is paying up for these studs that are lower owned than they probably should be.
Yeah, I agree. I like that. I'd be okay with any combo of those guys. You really just want to mix it up. We're never going to guess which one's going to go off, right?
Yep. And so Fox, we got news. He's back tonight. Yep. So any interest in him?
Well, I'm looking up right now because my first instinct is that Fox being back is actually better for Sabonis. And interest in De'Aaron Fox. So he was out for personal reasons. He wasn't hurt, so there's no fear of like minutes restrictions or anything. He should be good to go. He's coming in at no ownership, and his price is 8,500 on DraftKings. I think that's a pretty good tournament play too. Going right along with all the other guards are going to come in with ownership. Fox is going to have none, and if he puts up the highest score, then you're going to win a tournament at 2%
You want a
ownership.
bad narrative too?
Yeah. What's the bad narrative?
He is currently going to be playing for an all-star spot because Curry is going to be out. Okay.
Oh, that's
so,
interesting.
and maybe Kyrie or someone sits too. He's going to be playing for an all-star spot. So he has a little bit more extra motivation to play well tonight.
I didn't even consider that. Kyrie is in the West now.
I don't know how they're going to handle that per se, but
yeah, it sounds familiar. I'm pretty sure this happened a few years ago. I can't remember what ended up coming of it though.
Was it last year with Harden being traded and whatnot, or no? I mean,
it wouldn't have been Harden
because
he was still East. Yeah, because I feel like it affected. Like maybe someone got hurt and they just switched around. I have no idea what they're going to do though with the All Stars.
And they always make up rules anyways with that, but
yeah, it's whatever is convenient for ratings.
But for real, I do think there is some sort of narrative to that where he might feel like he was snubbed a little bit and have a little bit extra motivation to play well to potentially try to make the All-Star squad, make a point that he should be on the All-Star squad.
Yeah, I like that. I have a pretty bad track record with narratives over the last few days. I said Ant Edwards might come out like, yeah, I'm an All-Star, and there was one other guy too, and no, they didn't at all. But either way, at the low percentage with the narrative, all of it combined, 2%, De'Aaron Fox is a good play tonight.
D'Angelo Russell went off last night. That wasn't your fault. Let's see here. Any questions as well? Cam Thomas definitely likes to shoot. Yeah, Cam Thomas is a fine play. I know we haven't really touched on him. I feel like it's more just a price tag. Like, didn't he get the biggest bump of them? Yeah, $5K for him.
I'm okay with the 5K on DraftKings. The 6K on FanDuel is a little bit tougher, but I mean, how do they not run Cam Thomas out 30 minutes tonight? He's their best player, right?
I like Claxton. I got about
okay. He's their best guard. Sorry, he's their best guard. And so how's he not take 15 plus shots?
Yeah.
But yeah.
So I kind of want to play him, honestly. It's the $500 discount to Edmund Sumner that's more appealing to me.
I have both of them in my single entry right now, but if you want to go with Cam Thomas for the contrarian over Edmund Sumner, that seems good too.
Yeah. Man, I'm not going to lie. It is difficult I'm trying to do kind of the build right now as well while we're kind of talking about this. It is difficult to feel comfortable, like you said, obviously we want 4 guards. Is it like Hardy that we want to go with? Do we want to go with Cam Thomas? It's very interesting in that dynamic here. And I'm just going to put both of them in there for now. We'll see what it looks like.
Let's see who I pulled up here. Yeah, my single entry, I kind of just jammed in the top plays with the value, so this is useless to look at, but...
Let's see. I'm going to put Giannis at the center spot. Then power forward wise, do you like Tatum? Do you like... I feel like it's a little bit priced up, but...
I like him enough to be in my player pool, not someone I'm going to target. Like the power forwards in my dummy right now are Evan Mobley and Dean Wade. Kind of a punt, but Kevin Love's out of the rotation and Dean Wade's getting minutes, and I think he's fine at 3,200. If no one else is playing him.
I see. I kind of get why Stanley Johnson's getting ownership now. Because you can just plug him in there, and this is a way where we can kind of get unique on the slate as well. I could easily get up to SGA, like we kind of mentioned, as a strong pivot or just ownership leverage spot. And then we have a lot of salary left over.
Or if SGA doesn't fit, I think Giddey is just as good of a points per dollar play too.
Yeah, you're right there. I like that. And if I'm playing those two, I think I do want to be on Clay a little bit there.
I am perfectly fine with that. I saw some people talking about the other Warriors guys, but with Clay and Poole and Draymond in and Wiggins in, I don't know if we need to get to the other guys. Maybe DiVincenzo, but like Ty Jerome, I don't think is necessary tonight.
Yeah, and then we have just a decent amount of plays right there that we could easily be on. Let's see, actually 5.4 for center. Walker Kessler, Robert Williams, Gafford, all okay. Jalen Duren, Isaiah Stewart, like we mentioned.
Yeah, Yeah, these are
I'll go
guys
with Stewart. You can't talk
yeah.
names.
Yeah, let's do it. 37 minutes, beef stew. No ownership.
And so, like, I feel like this build that we have out there kind of goes along with the theme of tonight, where we're getting kind of unique a little bit, but also like capturing the upside too. It's kind of the slate that we have.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, big fan of this build. The core pieces we talked about. I think this is a good slate, which means it's gonna be fun.
So, someone asked about Kessler Edwards. He's still in the G League, right? Like, I think that's part. Like with these G League players, you never know for sure what's going on with them.
Hmm. Yeah, he was there last year. He was one of the guys we were targeting a little bit when the Nets guys were out, but no, he hasn't been that this year. You did remind me of Day'Ron Sharp though. He randomly got a bunch of minutes. If for some reason the Nets don't want to run Claxton out, Day'Ron Sharp is a player. He exists. I don't know if we want to target it, but keep that in mind. Maybe we get some news a little bit later or something.
Well, if it's a game that blows out, he's definitely someone that should get around 20 minutes then too. So
Yeah.
if Simmons is out too, that helps as well.
Mm-hmm.
This is very much a good plug for the Discord chat. Make sure to be in there before lock, guys, because there's going to be some slate changing news, and even after lock, it's going to be a great leverage spot there. I think just being ready.
Mm-hmm. Kessler Edwards actually got recalled on Friday, so he is with the Nets, but I don't know if he's playable.
So is that confirmed though? I saw that blurb as well. It's just that was Friday. I always want the Monday news on those G League players.
Yeah, unless we get the news that he's being sent back to the G League, I think it's safe to assume he's with the team. Like, we can't assume he's playing at all, but they are short bodies. Like, I don't think we're considering him for DFS purposes, but we want to consider how he would affect the rotation if he got even like 12 to 16 minutes. Where are those minutes coming from?
Yeah. Okay. So any more questions coming in, guys? If not, we're going to be closing up here pretty shortly. Some people were talking about Sabonis. Players go through random stretches where they just have little lulls, and it seems like Sabonis isn't just kind of one of those right now.
Yeah, yeah, and like I said, it's hard to play when you don't have other good players on the court, and having De'Aaron Fox next to you is a pretty big deal.
His role kind of changes, what they're expecting or needing out of him kind of changes and whatnot.
Well, one thing I think people were assuming, I assumed it too, was that the offense was going to run through him, but he went under his assist prop every game that Fox was out. Like 5 games in a row, he's under his assist prop, and last game it was 8. Today it's 6.5, so it just keeps going down.
I didn't get to watch any of that. Did you watch any of those games by chance?
I did not watch, no, so I'm not sure. Like I imagine Malik Monk was just being a ball hog yesterday, and then before that, I don't know.
That, or was the defensive attention slightly different? Were they able to sag a little bit more, or
what was maybe, yeah. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I did want to touch on this comment asking about Edmund Sumner compared to Davion, saying that Edmund Sumner's scoring dependent. I don't know that that's not true, but he doesn't take that many shots to where we should consider him scoring dependent. To me, the main thing is he's going to have the ball in his hands a lot. Him and Cam Thomas are the main ball handlers on the Nets tonight. We know Edmund Sumner's capable of playing over 30 minutes, and so assuming he's in the starting lineup, I don't even think it's comparable to Davion Mitchell in terms of what we're expecting from fantasy production on Edmund Sumner. I think he's going to be a great play if he's in the starting lineup.
Yeah, I mean, the minutes should just be locked in there too, and like the role should be locked in there with Mitchell. Like there were still other guys there. The Nets are so depleted that the usage and the minutes should just be there tonight. Is really what it comes down to.
Yeah, like with Davion, the Kings have Malik Monk, Kevin Werder, even Terrence Davis off the bench, where the Nets really just have Patty Mills and Cam Thomas, and they're not going to run Patty Mills out for 25 minutes.
Watch them do that, and he goes off for like 40.
Yeah.
He could get hot. I mean, it could happen. It's not too crazy.
Oh, he definitely could. That's why I laughed, because I say that, and then this guy randomly plays 30 minutes and puts up 10 threes or whatever.
Yeah. He gets hot, gets an extra rotation, keeps him in the game. They win it. Patty Mills goes, yeah.
It's gross.
It is. Any thoughts on Christian Wood? I can handle that one real quick. So the thoughts on Christian Wood are pretty much Christian Wood is a interesting play just on the slate. On FanDuel, he's obviously much more appealing where he's a little bit cheaper. At 8.4, we don't know exactly what are his minutes going to be, so that is something we want confirmed. Also, with this game, there's the potential that it could blow out. You never know. So really, we got to make sure that the minutes are there. If they are, sure, it could be a strong price point play. The usage should be there. The sample size with Dinwiddie off the court, with DFS off the court, and with Luka off the court is very minimal, very small. We don't really have a big sample size on that. So we can't really draw too many conclusions from that. We do have a sample size with Luka off the court and with Dinwiddie off the court. Obviously, with Luka off the court, he does average like 45 fantasy points per 36. So yes, if this game stays close and if he gets the minutes, he could be productive and put up 40, maybe even 50 DK points. I would say the likelihood of that is a lot smaller today than it would be on a typical slate. And given his price tag, it doesn't make us want to chase him too much. And then let's see here. No more questions. All right. So you got any more final thoughts before we kind of finish up here?
Way higher owned than Cam Thomas, Edmund Sumner. Yeah, I mean, if you think that's something to attack, then play more Cam Thomas than Edmund Sumner. It's probably just position-wise, but we'll see closer to lock on Cam Thomas versus Edmund Sumner. I expect them both to just go up. I don't think they're going down. Yeah, Edmund Sumner, I don't see how he's going to be less than 27% owned if he's confirmed in the starting lineup, and then same with Cam Thomas. Even if Cam Thomas isn't in the starting lineup. Okay, if Cam Thomas is not in the starting lineup, then maybe he comes in around 15%. And he's a pretty good play. If he's in the starting lineup, he's going to come in for more than 15%. He's still going to be a good play.
Now, while we're pulling this up, I got to ask, Royce O'Neal, 1% ownership, is that just way too low?
It is. It is. He deserves more than 1% ownership today. I'm not going to, let me just see if I have him in my stuff right now. Royce O'Neal. I don't have a single lineup with Royce O'Neal in my first 150 run. 5,900, it's just, even at this price, what are we hoping happens, right?
35, I guess, is what we'd be hoping for.
Yeah, and so, like, what has to happen for him to put up 35 fantasy points? Like, he could, it's possible, but I think it's unlikely, and there has to be other 6K guys more capable. Like, Jordan Poole's 6K, different positions, but that's like not even close. Like, I'd rather get to Tim Hardaway Jr., I think.
Yeah, that makes sense. The ceiling's just a lot higher there. That makes sense. I just saw that. I'm like, wow, that is really low for a guy that, was kind of a weird focal point in DFS for like a 2-3 day stretch in there earlier on this season.
Yeah, this season's been wild, man.
It has. Okay, so I think that's it. We're good to get off for tonight. If you guys have any questions, make sure to get those in the Discord chat before lock. Link to that's in the description, as well as access to the tools that you saw in this video. Didn't really show you guys the lineup optimizer, but that's there as well. You just go to lineup builder, start building, and then you click on the NBA slate. So it's kind of as simple as that. Select the slate that you want to be on, and then we're good to go. Any final thoughts?
Yep, just pay attention to starting lineups. We're probably not going to get anything from coaches' notes, but look at those player ownerships on the players we talked about. They're still going to be good plays in an hour and a half.
Okay, that's all, guys. Have a good slate, and as always, good luck.
Hey, thanks, everyone.